And now we need the images of the car, and these images we get from SharePoint. And to get the images, we would like to have the get items action. And now I have to look on the SharePoint list, which we created in the previous video. I have here entries for vehicles like vehicle 1, vehicle 2. Then we also have an ID, which is a kind of internal technical ID. And we have the attachment column where we have the photos. If I look into one of the records, we see here under attachments, we have a number of images that show the car. And this is what I want to get from SharePoint via the Power Automate flow. To get that, I have to first filter the record for the vehicle with the vehicle ID. To do so, I go back to the Power Automate flow, and for the action get items, I have to select the SharePoint site where my list is hosted. It's a M365. And then I have to select the list, and then we have vehicle images. And now I get all records from the SharePoint list, but this is not what I want. I want only one specific record. To get this one record, I have to filter with the vehicle ID. And to do so, I go to the advanced parameters and I see a number of parameters and I see filter query. And this is the parameter I want to fill. For vehicle ID, you have to know the first column that is always created in a SharePoint list has the name title. You can change it to whatever you want to, but the technical name still remains title. So the filter query I put in is title equal, and this is a copy paste error. So I delete this, but I want to have the apostrophe, which I keep. And then I look for the vehicle ID in my trigger data. And vehicle ID we have here, and I compare it to the title, which is the column for the vehicle ID in the SharePoint list, and compare it to the vehicle ID I received from the trigger, and that's the record I'm selected in the Power App. Now I want to put all the images together in one email, and to do this I need a loop. And in Power Apps, a loop is called apply to each. And apply to each, I have to select what it relates to. And I have here the get items action from SharePoint, and I apply it to body value. And then I add the next action. And what can happen is that I don't have pictures for a car. In example, we see in the SharePoint list that the ones with a paperclip, they have attachments, and the one without paperclip, they don't have an attachment. So what I need is a condition to differentiate whether a record has an attachment or not. And I select the condition action, and here I select the property has attachment is equal to true. And if it's true, I would like to do an action. If it's false, I actually don't want to do anything. Now I continue here on true, and what I want are the attachments. So I add an action, and it's a SharePoint action again, which is called get attachments. Of course, here I have to type in the site address, have to give the list name, M365 team, vehicle images, and I have to give an ID. And the ID I get from my get items. And this is the ID which we talked about earlier. Every record has a ID. So we get the attachments, but we don't get the images yet. What we need is another action to get the image content. So we say plus add action. And since we have more images, in most cases, we say apply to each. And we haven't applied to each for each record. And now we haven't applied to each for each attachment as well. And to differentiate these both, we give them different names. So apply to each list item attachment. Here we take from the get attachments, the body, to iterate through all the attachments we find. And we add another action, which is the action to get the file content. And the name is get attachment content, and we see it below. To clarify things, with get attachments, I received a list of the attachment from one record, and get attachment content, that gives me the content of one particular attachment. To configure the action, we have to select the SharePoint site, the list, and now it asks for an ID. And this is the ID of the record from the SharePoint list. So if you look at the SharePoint list of one item, we have the ID column. And this is what is asked. So please give me the ID of the record. So this I get from getItems, and then I need the file identifier. So I also need an ID, but I need the ID from getAttachments, and this is the ID of the file attachment, not the ID of the SharePoint list record. Yeah, if you look in one record, we have this is the file ID we need. Now I want to add the file content to my array, which I created earlier. To do that, I need the action append to array. And after I selected this, select the array variable that I created earlier in the flow, bar attachment array. And here we need a JSON statement. JSON is a kind of technical language to define data structures. And first I need the name, which is the file name, and then I need the content, which is the actual file content, and it's called content bytes. The name I get from my getAttachments, and I take the display name here. Then I have to make a comma to separate the name from the content bytes. And content bytes, this is what I get from getAttachment content, which is the attachment content. Now I have to close the curly bracket to close the statement. And now every attachment will be added to my array so that I can later at this point in time put it in one step